Hello, this is Pixel, and today I want to talk about a game called Pendragon. This game was made by the same people that made 80 Days and made Sorcery, very popular series of games out on mobile. I remember that from my days. Reviewing mobile games was always a very, very popular game. This one, though, a little bit different. This is a turn-based strategy RPG, and it's a little bit of a roguelike as well. At least it felt like a little bit of a roguelike. Now, the duration of the game for the whole thing is kind of short. It's not a very long playthrough if you play straight through the game, but that's not the hook of this game. The hook of this game is that there are some randomly generated levels in it, and the path you take through the game and the character that you pick in the very beginning is constantly changing. And so there are nearly infinite possibilities for what exact story comes out of this, how this thing gets told. It is the story of King Arthur, but you can even complete this game with Arthur dying or Arthur living, with Guinevere dying or Guinevere living. We can make it where Guinevere is just not even part of the story. It's kind of like choose your own adventure, but on steroids almost. This is a very, very dynamic game. Now, when I first saw how this game operated, I was worried that it was going to be very narrative heavy because they pitch it as a very narrative heavy game, and I was worried that the gameplay itself was going to be a little bit thin. I'm really glad to say that even though, yes, it is very narrative heavy and the story does get you quite involved, the dialogue is very, very good here. The gameplay is not lackluster. It's a little bit thin in terms of like a strategy RPG, but this game had me very much thinking about every single one of my moves. And because it is a roguelike type of game, if one of your characters dies, that's it. There's no save spots. There's no going back. That character's dead. You're going to proceed without that character. And as I said previously, that includes Arthur. If you get to the end of the game, you pick up Arthur. In my first playthrough, Arthur died at the end of the game, and I just kept on playing. This idea of very big consequences for the gameplay, though, really ties right back into the story because every decision you make for every single time you take a step can have dire consequences for your plan for the story. Things aren't always going to go exactly the way you want them, but that's the charm of this game. So how do the mechanics actually work in battle? Well, the game plays out kind of like chess, except for in chess, all the different parts move very differently. Here, every character can move left, right, up, and down, and then if you change your stance, you can move diagonally. Now, you get different attacks in the game and different advantages, and sometimes you can attack within two spaces, or you can attack special conditions in like a diagonal pattern, but for the most part, your typical movement is back and forth. Change your stance, you go diagonally, and you can just move one space at a time. This makes it so often you're doing a little bit of a dance with the enemies, and sometimes it ends up making a lot more dialogue happen in the heat of battle. Some battles, in fact, you can actually fight your way through them, or I guess fight's probably the wrong word, but you can negotiate your way through, and you'll actually sometimes pick up comrades, friends, associates, team members, whatever you want to call them, onto your team just through the dialogue that'll happen in a particular round because you weren't fighting. You went up to somebody and they looked like they were nefarious, but because you weren't in an advantageous position to attack them, you started to talk. And as you talked, you realized that that person wasn't a threat, and then they end up joining your team. Other times, blood is the only way that you're going to get through battle, and you're only going to get through it by having to fight that person. One of the great things about this game is that there are a lot of starting characters. Now, in the beginning, you only get a choice between two, but you can see the silhouettes of a whole bunch more, and they get unlocked as you play through the story in different ways. You'll find different characters. They will get unlocked as starting characters as well, so you can see how their story goes through these subsequent playthroughs of this same storyline. Along your travels, though, you will pick up additional skills. The skills only last on that character through that playthrough, much like other roguelikes. But these different skills can range from all kinds of different abilities. A lot of them are different ways of attacking, but some characters have abilities like Morgana can actually soothe animals and turn them kind of docile for a little while. Ends up being very advantageous. In order to use these skills, though, you have to use the skill points that you pick up on the board as you're playing each level. Those skills will travel from one level to the next with you, so if you find that one particular level is very difficult, you may have to burn through a lot more skill points, which will then have you picking up more in the subsequent levels so that you can actually use those abilities. If you start a level and you have absolutely no skill points, that means you're going to have to attack in a very standard way, only by attacking enemies right next to you. It's going to put you at a disadvantage for that level. Now, there is a health mechanic in the game, and you can get your health back by consuming rations. Rations are given to you by completing certain story events or going through certain days. You'll, on occasion, just get rations. Those can be put towards that health meter, but the health doesn't apply to your battle. When you're in battle, if you get hit, pretty much one hit, you're dead. Same thing with the enemies, one hit, they're dead. This might sound really bad on paper or just by me telling you that, but when you see the execution in battle playing the game, it actually works out pretty well. There's also a morale meter that is represented with a little sword up in the corner, and if you take too many turns without actually doing anything, that morale meter can go down and your characters can either flee or have other negative effects that can happen to you in battle. I haven't had this happen, so I haven't seen the effects of it, but the reason that that's in the game is to keep you from putting yourself in stalemate type situations where the enemy's just moving back and forth and you're just moving back and forth. It's to incline the player, incentivize the player into taking meaningful actions. This is a mechanic that wasn't actually necessary for the way that I played the game, but it's understandable why it's there. So the music in the game, while completely appropriate, wasn't anything either positive or negative. It pretty much plays a low-key part in this story, and I think that's probably good enough. It doesn't really need to be anything great. It doesn't end up being a selling feature of the game overall, but it was fine. The one thing that I am a little bit critical of in this game, and this is completely subjective, is the character design models. And this is not the presentation or the graphics design overall, because I really like what they did. There's a lot of just 2D sprites and then they just animate them by moving them in and out. Totally works. Execution on that, totally perfect. But I think just specifically the characters themselves, not to my taste, and they may be to yours, and that's great, but I really wish they would have been rethought up, either maybe a more serious direction or a more cartoony direction. They ended up looking, I don't know, very unpleasing to me. So recently in a lot of my reviews, I've said sentiment something along the lines of, this one's not for me, but this is the group of people that it's probably for. This is the opposite of that situation. I am very much part of the niche that loves this particular type of game. If you're someone that likes strategy RPGs, turn-based games, or narrative-heavy games, this one probably is for you. Take a look at it. Take a look at some gameplay videos. Make sure to watch the entirety of this review so that you know the ins and outs of all of the gameplay mechanics. I think that I can wholeheartedly endorse this game, even though in this particular video, I'm not going to give this one a score. I haven't played it long enough to really, truly give it what kind of a score it may deserve. I don't know how deep it is, but I do know that the few hours that I've played it so far, I really do love this game. If you liked this video, make sure to leave a like on this video. And if you haven't subscribed, take a look at some of my other reviews, and if you like those, consider subscribing. Until next time, this has been Pixel.